Okay. Today we're going to start Pei Zayin Amud Beis, and it's Chatzi Isarin Mahaya Meshamish. It's let's say about 10 lines down from the top on 87B. Does that make sense? When it talks about half the Isarin, what did it do? Okay. Does that make sense? That's what we said. Okay. Okay. Trying to do one thing in my head. Let's see if I can get everything done. Okay, so it says that we learned in the Mishnah that we had an Isaran and a Chatzi Isaran. According to Reb Meir, we had two Isarans, right? And plus a Chatzi Isaran. We're talking about the measurements that we had in the Mishnah. Okay, perfect. So now the Gemara says, what did you do with the Chatzi Isaran? It says, it quotes the Mishnah, it says, Shabai hayamaydi l'chaviti kain gadol. You would use it to measure for the kain gadol. The kain gadol had a mincha every day. That mincha was one Isaran, and a half an Isaran was in the morning, a half Isaran was in the afternoon. So you would need a half an Isaran to measure for the morning, a half Isaran to measure for the afternoon. The Gemara asks, Ma'idid? In other words, lechatchila, you would measure a half and a half. That's not how you did it. Ramini, you have a contradiction. Chaviti kain gadol yabayin chatzah, and the kain gadol's carbon would not come by half. Maybe you would bring a full one and then divide it in half. Because we're making it look that you have two halves that you put together to create a whole. But we have a source that says that you didn't have two halves that you made a whole. You had a whole that you divided into two halves. So the simple answer to this is what the Gemara is going to say. Gemara says, "Amar Rav Sheshes, my moeded nami dektani mechalik." We didn't mean to measure it out lechatchila. We meant to divide it. How do you divide it? You use a half to divide it. You have a whole and then you divide. That's the simple answer. We were thinking that it meant that we're going to take two halves and put them together and we're going to get a whole. It says no. We're
But it was divided after it was mixed, no?
It was divided. Oh, I'm not sure. That's a good question.
I always thought that's how it is, that they would prepare them in and then divide it. Because I think we learned that it couldn't be like put together, like it had to be prepared as one.
It was mixed with oil. What was it mixed with? Remember? Oil or water? There was oil, but I don't remember if it was on the top. I don't remember. Oh, maybe I have in here the things. Just 1 second.
I get confused because there was different ones. There was one that put like a little bit of oil at the beginning, then the flour, and then the rest of the oil on the top.
I don't have it over here. I had it in my other Gemara. I had that. Okay. You may have a good question. We're going to have a few of these today. Rami Bar Chama is going to ask for Chisda. It says, Chatzi Saren Reb Meir Gada Shaya Machakaya. Reb Meir said that there were two Isarans. Remember, we said originally we started off saying that there's two dry measurements in the base of English. One was an Isaran, another one was a Chatzi Isaran. Came along Reb Meir. Reb Meir says no, there's actually two Isarans, plus there's a third, there's a Chatzi Isaran. What did he need two Isarans for? And remember, we said that it wasn't that they only had two in the entire base of English. There had many in the base of English. It says there are only two types. There are two draws. This job was for the two cabinets. This was for the Isarans, and this is for the Chatzis. And according to Reb Meir, this one was for the Isarans, this was for the Isarans, and this is for the Chatzis. So why they have two? So Reb Meir explained that one of them was Gadosh and one of them was Machak. One of them was an Isaran if it was heaping. The other one was because that looked better. You're right, when you brought something heaping. The other, which meant that it was smaller. The other one was large, and it was an Isaran when it was flush with the top. So now, Rami Bar Chama's question from Rav Chisda, which is his father-in-law, he says, according to Rameir, what about the Chatzi Yisarn? Was the Chatzi Yisarn Godesh or Machak? Was it heaping? Heaping Chatzi, because Rameir introduced that not every Yisarn, not every measurement is going to be flush with the top. So was it heaping or was it flush with the top? Machak means flush with the top. Now the Gemara says, Simen Chatzi Chavish, and those are the three questions that we're going to have here. The Gemara asks, V'tibaylach l'Rabbanan. Why don't you ask about the Rabbanan? The Rabbanan also have a Chatzi Yisarn. And the Rabbanan, Yisarn Gufeikami Bailu. You could really ask on the Yisarn, not on the Chatzi Yisarn. You can ask on the Yisarn. Because the Rabbanan only said that you have one Yisarn. So which Yisarn was it? Was it the one that's heaping or was it the one that's flush? Gadashaya Machakaya. Yeah. So when the boy was learning the Aleph Beis, and he came to Tzerei Pei, so why do you need a Tzerei on the Pei? So already Pei. Pei is Pei, but they don't need the Tzerei. So they said, why didn't you ask that question by Hey? It's the same thing. So here, is he asking on Reb Meir, why didn't you ask on the Rabbanan? You have the same question. Now the truth is, the Rabbanan never introduced this issue of Machak or Gadosh. You would assume that the Rabbanan have one measurement. It's always Machak. That's the measuring kapur. You fill it to the top, and that's how it is. It's only Reb Meir that introduced this issue. So we're asking according to Reb Meir. But anyway, Amar Lei, Rav Chisda responds to Rami Bar Chama. He says, Midra Reb Meir nishma l'Reb Meir, Midra Reb Meir nishma l'Rabbanan. I can figure it all out. Once you answer the question on Reb Meir, I'll have the pshat in Reb Meir's other Chatzi Yisarn. And once I figure out Reb Meir's Chatzi Yisarn, then I can figure out the Rabbanan's Chatzi Yisarn. I'll figure out the Rabbanan's Yisarn. Midam Reb Meir Yisarn Machak. Since Reb Meir says that the Yisarn that they used for the Chaviti Kain Gadol was Machak, so therefore the Chatzi Yisarn, not be Machak, but also be Machak. When did they use an Yisarn that was Gadosh? That's only if they wanted it to be heaping, when they would bring it in a heaping way. They wanted to show it. That was all a visual. It should look bigger. Since by the Chaviti Kain Gadol, since by the Chaviti Kain Gadol they didn't have this the visual because they didn't bring it in the Yisarn because they only brought it half and half. So then it would have to be they would be using the other one, which was Machak. If they're using the Machak, then for the Chatzi Yisarn was also a Machak. Oh, the Chatzi Yisarn is Machak, means flush with the top. I mean, the Reb Meir Machak, Rabbanan Nami. So if the Reb Meir's was Machak, then the Chatzi Yisarn by the Rabbanan was also Machak. Okay, so we have our answer. We have. Yeah, thank you. I said a bracha, right? Yeah. Rami Bar Chama Rav Chisda. Chavit Kain Gadol Kama Mechalkan Lechalis. Bamem Mechalkan Lechalis. The Chavit Kain Gadol. How many chalas did they have in Chavit Kain Gadol? With the 12 chalas? I think it was 6 and 6. They were divided. They don't say. It was divided. What did they use to divide it? That's what the Gemara is asking here.
Does it have to do with the sugar?
No. What I know would be
12.
would be 12. Showbread was much bigger. But so what did he use to divide it? Was it biyad or bekeli? Would they divide it by hand or did they use a vessel to divide it? The Gemara says pshita the biyad. Obviously they used the by hand. The bekeli with the torne yachnes. Are you going to bring a scale into the base of Mikdash? The Gemara says biyachnes. So what? Bring a scale in. That's given the Beklalaksiv, since when it speaks about bread in the Teichacha, in the curses, it says, Yeshivu lachmechem b'mishkal. You're gonna have to weigh their bread. So that was meant, that was a curse. So they didn't want to do weighing bread in the Beis Hamikdash. So Lava Yerchara, it wasn't respectful to do that in the Beis Hamikdash, to have to weigh the bread. So they would divide it by hand. I guess it would be an estimation.
If you do this long enough, you get good.
Huh?
If you do it long enough, you get good.
Yeah,
Like the matzahs. The thick one, the thin ones.
the way we do our measurements is usually by volume. That's the way we do it. However, I think the Sfardim do it by weight. And my son was telling me that you can always do it by weight. You can figure out your volume with weight. It's not a problem. And you can get. I think I'm not sure what he was saying, that we can measure. He wanted to get a scale before Pesach to measure the matzah, to see how big it was, to weigh the matzah, and to see. And he was telling me that, well, water. I know the measurement of water, because 1 gram, 1 cubic centimeter of water is always gonna be 1 gram. But I don't know if that works with wine and the other things.
With the air, it changes the whole thing, no?
I know, but I think what they do is, remember that book, the Kezias book? Did you see the book Kezias?
Yeah.
They
Uh-huh.
they covered something in this very thin plastic, and then they dipped it in to water, and they used water displacement to see if it's a Kezias. What about the air pockets they covered a piece of pizza? We could talk about pizza, but and they put it in. What about the air pockets? They're ignoring that. Yeah. So I think they held that you ignore the air. So anyway, that's what would be different with weight. With weight would be totally different, right? Okay, and that third question of Rami Barchama. Boy mine Rami Barchama Merav Chizda Shulchan Ma'ashi Kaddish Kmatzim Begoidesh Shaloi. The way Rashi learns this is that there's supposed to be 2 spoons on the shulchan for the frankincense, for the levina. Let's say you didn't have the spoons there, and you put it straight on the table. The kaimetz, there's 2 kaimetz of levina that go with the showbread. Let's put in spoons on the table. Let's say you didn't have the spoons, and you put it straight on the table. Mida mekadesh lechem, so kamatzim nami mekadesh. If the showbread, if the table can consecrate the showbread, it can also consecrate the spoons. Or maybe it only consecrates what's eligible, what's fit to go directly on the table, and not things that aren't supposed to go directly on the table. So Rabbi Chisda responded, it's not Mekadesh. So Aini, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan says, L'divrei Emer Tefachayim Mechza Koifel, Nimtza Shulchan, Mekadesh Chamisha Setefach L'mayla. Divrei Emer Tefachayim Koifel, Nimtza Shulchan, Mekadesh Nema Setefach L'mayla. There's a machlekes, how tall the showbread were going to be. Problem with the table was that it was an amma and a half, right? The table was an amma and a half.
It's an amma wide.
It was an amma wide. The showbread itself was an amma, I think, was 5 tvachim, according to that opinion. So the showbread itself was 10 tvachim. It's massive.
Okay, 31 inches.
That's like a what's it called? A bar mitzvah challah. But it was flattened sort of, so it was more like a bar mitzvah lafa.
Okay.
So then what they did was they bent it up 2.5 tvachim on this side, probably like it went like it was bent upwards. So 2.5 on each side would make it fit perfectly on the table. Then they had 6 rows they had 6 per row. They had 2 rows and 6 per row, so they got piled up. So if you have 2.5 tvachim times 6, you're gonna have 15 tvachim, right? Because 4 would be 10, plus another 2 would be 15. So according to the opinion that says that it was 2.5 tvachim folded over, so then you're going to have 15 tvachim. It's according to one that says that it's only folded over two tvachim. I think that would go with the opinion that says that the mizbeach was really 6 tvachim. It was one amma, but how big is an amma? 6 tvachim. There's machlekes how big an amma is. 5 tvachim or 6 tvachim. So it's not a construction amma, an amma of the Caleb. How big an amma was? Also machlekes from Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. So if it's 6 tvachim, so then the bread was going to be folded over only 2 tvachim on each side, because not 2.5. Two tvachim on each side means 2 times 6 is going to be, it's going to go 12 tvachim in the air. So we see that it's mekadesh all the way up in the air. So why can't it be mekadesh the breads? Amalei ain't a mekadesh li karev of a mekadesh li pasel. It says it doesn't consecrate it enough to be able to bring it now on the mizbeach without ever putting it into a holy vessel. But it does consecrate it enough that if you leave it overnight too long, it's going to become puzzle, and or if you take it out of the temple, it's going to become puzzle. So it's like in this limbo state that it's enough to ruin it, but not enough to offer it. If it didn't go into a holy vessel, it just went onto the table. Okay. Now we have a Mishnah. Goes like this. Don't Dr. Stein was telling me that there's a lot of measurements. Don't get so concerned. It's like one measurement broken into a few parts, and it's not so it's not confusing. It's pretty straightforward. Sheva midei shalach. There's 7 measuring cups of liquid measure. Hayu b'michdash. There was the hin. Now the hin is 12 lug, and each lug is 6 eggs. So what's 12 times 6?
72.
It'd be 72 eggs. All right. It's 12 lug. So it's quite a large measuring. Then there's chatzia hin. Chatzia hin would be not 12 lug, would be 6 lug. By the way, the chatzia hin was used for the wine or the oil for the wine and oil for a par. Chatzia hin lapar. Chatzia hin lapar. They would bring this for a bull. If you bring a bull, so this would come along.
In my head, I'm thinking an egg is 2 ounces of liquid.
Right. So this would be a chatzia, 36. It would be 72 ounces.
44 ounces. It's about 40.
No, because not the 72 was the hin. The hin actually wasn't used for any animal. The chatzia hin, 36, which would be 72. It's not so bad. Okay, then there's shlishis hin. This is a third. What's a third? Is four lug.
72 ounces is a lot.
No, it's a gallon. It's a 4 liter about a gallon.
More than half a gallon. Half a gallon is like 64 ounces.
They didn't use gallons in those days.
Is it an American thing? Liters.
So it's the large, not the big one that you get in Costco, not the one that you can't use, a thing of olive oil, but they sell you one that's like it's a little cheaper, but it can handle it. It's too big. It's the one that's like usable. You can hold it with 2 hands. You can use it.
Exactly.
Okay. Then the shlish is a hin, which is actually brought with the ram. That's going to be 4 lug. And then there's a revius a hin, a quarter of a hin, which is brought with a sheep, and that would be 3 lug, which would be 3 lug, would be 18 eggs.
I'm assuming it's about a liter.
Yeah. Okay.
18 eggs, 36 ounces.
Okay. Now we go down. We jump down to the lug, a chatzi lug, a revius lug, a lug, a half a lug, and a revius lug. I think a revius lug would be an egg and a half. So, right? 6. A lug is 6 eggs. So a quarter, right? A half a lug would be 3 eggs, and a quarter would be 1.5 eggs. Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok, he says that shnasais hayu behin Adkan lapar, adkan la'ayel, adkan lekevas. He had a totally different way of doing this. He said, why do you have different measuring cups? You can go this thing, it comes on a ring, and you have each cup is a different thing. You have the ring for. He says, why do you want to have the ring that has all of these containers attached to it? You have one big measuring cup, and then there's lines on it that say it's easier to use it like that. The only thing is you have to put it down to level it out. You hold it. We can get it. Could go off a little bit. Okay, so that's Rebbe Elazar Bar Tzadok. Rebbe Elazar Bar Tzadok, his father was the one was Rebbe Tzadok that fasted for 40 years. So he was around in the Beis Hamikdash, possibly, if it's him. Reb Shimon says that Lo Yahaya Sham Hin. He says, why did they have a hin? Who needed the hin? Who needed the hin? The hin wasn't used for any of the karbanos. It's just a very large measurement, but it wasn't used for anything. Ella mida yisera shalugu mechza haisasham shabaya maidid leminchas kain gadol. The kain gadol's mincha had oil 3 lug, but because half in the morning, half in the afternoon, so they would measure now lugu mechza babayka lugu mechza bein arbayin. So he had a tradition that there were 7 measurements. Problem is, if you drop the hin, then you lose 1. So he says, I have another one. We'll do a lug mechza. That will be another measuring cup, a lug and a half. Put it onto the thing. Okay. Tanur Rabbanan. Started in a brisa. Very interesting brisa. It goes. This is Sheva Mida Shalach. The brisa has what it says in our Mishnah, except that it has another opinion here that switches everything around. Which is, it seems like it's the same thing, and then the Gemara is going to ask, but it's the same thing. Why are you switching it backwards? Okay, so it says the 7 midas shalach ayu b'mikdash. First is revius lug. We're starting from the bottom. The quarter of a lug, 1.5 eggs. Chatzi lug, 3 eggs. Lug, 6 eggs. Revius ahin. This would be 3 quarter of a hin, which is 3 lug, which is 18 eggs, right? Ushlishis hin. That would be 4 lug, a third of a hin, which is 4 lug. That would be 24 eggs. Chatzi hin, which is 36 eggs. And vehin, which is 72 eggs. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Notice we started from the bottom with the smallest measuring cup. A revius. When we say a revius, we're referring to a revius lug, right? You say you need a revius for kiddush.
Wine.
Which revius of what? That's I guess a revius lug, which is an egg and a half. What do we say?
3 ounces.
Which is about 3 ounces.
I estimated that it was 2 ounces and 1.5 eggs.
Yeah.
3 ounces.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Ounces.
Yeah. I stopped using bechers by the Seder. They're too big. The bechers, they're like 7 ounces. I use the small glass. I got everyone small juice glasses, so like the 5 ounce glasses. It covers all the shitas, and I don't need to.
Baruch Hashem.
Yeah. Reb Meir says, hin, chatzia hin, shlishis hin, revius hin, the log, chatzi log, revius log. Exactly the same measurements, but he starts from the top. He starts from the largest one. Reb Shimon says, we have here the same thing that he says in our Mishnah, la yesham hin, chemaya meshamish. Who needs the hin? The hin didn't use any. It wasn't used for anything. It was only used when by Moshe they used the hin for the Shemana Mishcha. That was it. That was only used once, but we didn't need it for the future generations. Ella, so I'm sorry. So what are you going to bring instead? Because we know that there's a tradition that there are 7 measurements. Okay. Amrullah, the sages said to him, I guess it means to Reb Shimon, why do they need to have a lug mechza? They had a chatzi lug, a half a lug. Why do you need a lug and a half? If you have a half a lug, what you can do is you can measure it 3 times, and then you have the lug and a half, right? You do it 3 times, and you have enough. According to you, chatzi lug, v'lug la yase, b'revius eisel sham, efshel l'shar b'revius. Then why half a lug and a lug? You can have a revius. If you have a quarter, you do the half a lug twice, and you do the lug 4 times, right? And that will work. Ella zeh klal ha'mikdash. Rather, there's a rule in the base of Mikdash. Kli shemeshamish mida zu ein meshamish mida acheres. When you're supposed to have this measurement, you have a keli that matches that measurement. We don't want you having to do like 3 times this. Actually, it turns out that for the isarin they did do that, but for the liquid ones they didn't, right? For the isarin they had to do shnei esreinim lapar. They didn't have a 2 isarin measurement. They had to do it twice. So I guess it's just for the liquid ones.
But it gets lengthy. They already have to fill it up 4 times. Like, I don't know, maybe they could delay the process.
Right. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok says that there were shnases. Okay. Just the question is why by the dry ones, then why would that be different than the liquid ones? Are the liquid ones more difficult to use than the dry ones? Because the dry ones, they did do that twice.
But only twice.
Or 3 times, if it's 3. Yeah. Okay, now the Gemara asks the obvious question, why do we even list Rabbi and Rabbi Yehuda separately? If they actually say the same thing, they just have a different order where they're starting from. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Birutze midas ikabenayo. The question is, if we're dealing with liquid measures, so you have a meniscus that goes over the cup, right? What's it called?
Meniscus.
The meniscus. When you fill it up, it goes over like the surface tension that it holds it over there. You get a little bit extra.
Yeah. Curves up.
The Kiddush.
Like in the Kiddush cup, yeah.
Convex.
Convex.
Okay. Convex, yes.
So
I say convex, of course.
when the Rebbe says that it's supposed to spill over, it doesn't mean that you spill over, that it should drip down the sides, or does it mean that it spill over the just go over? It's like over.
What does it help that these Kiddush cups have like going outwards, so that would help it like create
No, it always does. Yeah, even if it's straight. Even if it's straight. There's always, right? There's even without a lip, it still goes up higher than the thing. Okay, so the question is, does that become Kaddish? It could be Naya. Lamanda Amar Mimata Lamaila, the one that counted from the bottom, which was the opinion of, I guess, Reb Meir. He started from that was
Yehuda.
That was Rabbi Yehuda. He started from the bottom. Thank you. The Revi'ah Salot. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that started from the bottom. So then Kosavar Brutimidis Naskach. He says that the Brutimidis, you see, the way it would work like this was you made the first cup. And then to make the second cup, the right size, you would pour from the first cup 2 into the next cup. Now, because the first cup was filled up, so you would fill it up. You would let it overflow, and you would make the second cup in a generous way. So that means that the first cups, the smallest one that you made, had birutzimi. This had the overflow, and that was niskadish because now you were making the next one with that overflow. So revius yavle rachman al Moshe. The Eberster gave Moshe a revius, and with this revius you're going to measure all the other ones. Amalei, he tells them, Shar the ka'ile lebirutzin. We use this utensil to measure all the other ones, and when it's going to spill over, that's going to be included, and not the spill over, but when it's heaps over, that's going to be used in the next measurement, which means that the brutzi midas, what goes over is considered consecrated. Lemandam malmaila lemata, but if the Eberster gave it the opposite way, he gave him the biggest one. He says, that the heap, what goes over, is not consecrated. V'hin yavle rachman al Moshe. Eberster gave Moshe a hin. Omle sharba, he says, measure everything else out with this hin. And then the kanafki berutzin. How are you going to measure all the other ones? So you're going you would immediately start with a full hin, and then you'd measure out the other ones, like dividing it in half and dividing it into thirds. Use that, but without the what's heaping. When you're going up, then you're going to be more generous. When you're going down, then you're not going to be that generous, right? That's the
This one it seems like it's more accurate because the one that's heaping, like while they move, like you could spill some over, like it's not
right.
gonna be consistent.
So what the commentary is saying over here is that when you use, if it would be heaping, it would spill on the ground. It won't go into it. So when you have a smaller cup that's heaping and you're making a bigger cup, so then you can spill it in. But when you have a bigger cup that you're doing using a smaller cup, it's going to spill on the ground. So you're not going to have the heat going into the vessel. It's going to have it spilling over. Okay. Abaya. Okay, so that's the machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Abaya, he argues on this. Amar the kuli alma birutzimi the sikla meimanaskachu vikla meimar leinaskachu. He says I'm not getting into it. If the birutzimidis, if what's heaping over was kodesh or wasn't kodesh, he says I'm not getting into that. V'acha b'melayim kamiflgi. When it says that the vessels need to be full, it says shneim melayim, they're both full, right? So it says melayim, there's a machlekes over here. Manda amar melmayla lamata, the one that says that we start from above and go below, that's according to Reb Meir. He says kasavar melayim shliach savar shleyoser. Means it should not be any more or any less. Manda amar mimata lamayla, then melayim shleyachsar. Aval yoser melayim krinan bey. If you start from the bottom and you're working up, so then Malayim could be, when it's Malayim means full. Full could mean as long as it's not missing anything. But even if you have more, it's still considered full. Right? Doesn't this have to do with the Birutzi Midas?
I think also with the solids, it's easier, like for it not to spill over.
Yeah, that's because the solids heaps up. But the let me see what they say in this. Let me look at this one. Here, regarding the Birutzi Midas, they say the early commentaries disagree about what the Gemara is referring to. Some explain that the reference is to the liquid that spills onto the outer side of the vessel walls when it's filled beyond its capacity. Therefore, it would appear that the dispute concerning whether the overflow is consecrated is a function of a more basic dispute concerning whether the outside of a service vessel consecrates and that which comes in contact with it. Alternatively, Rambam suggests that the reason that the overflow is consecrated is due to a concern that people might see the overflow treated as non-sacred and wrongly assume that it came from inside the service vessel, think that a consecrated liquid may be used in a non-sacred manner. He uses this reason to explain how the overflow could have become consecrated, despite the fact that there was clearly no intention to consecrate any liquid except that was inside the vessel. Second explanation of the term birutze is that it refers to the liquid that is held by surface tension above the lip of the vessel, but filled to capacity. That's Rashi in the manuscript on our Gemara. Third suggestion is that it refers to the froth that rises above the lip of the vessel. That's Rabbeinu Gershon. Okay, but that's not Abaya. Abaya says, here he says like this. Reb Meir holds that the term full indicates that the size of each vessel should be exact, and that it should hold neither less nor more than the prescribed amount. If one calculates the various sizes by first filling a vessel of the largest size, one hin, and then dividing its contents carefully between two smaller vessels, and so on, one will arrive at accurate measurements. By contrast, if one starts with the smallest size and uses it multiple times to calculate larger quantities, and each time one pours, he includes the overflow of the smaller vessel, and so the quantities calculated are slightly larger than prescribed. So the concern over here, according to Reb Meir, that started on the top, so he says it has to be mamish exact, can't be any more, any less. But according to Reb Yehuda, that says that we started from the bottom, so he's not concerned if there's any more, because it may be a little bit larger when you're making the vessels. So therefore, he holds that malayim full just means that there shouldn't be any less. But if there's more, then that's not a problem. Okay, that's interesting.
Earlier, they had the discussion about like how thick the batter was and everything, like when they would take it out. Like they were so worried about the consistency that it had to be like so exact.
You were worried about the consistency of the flour with the oil? In which context were we worried about that?
I don't remember. I don't know if it was like if some
Taking the scoop?
yeah. I don't know if they had to like replenish it.
And how would that affect the how much the contents of the container were?
No, it's not the concept of the container. It's like maybe like the consistency wasn't the same, so it wouldn't be like accurate the amount of oil and the amount of flour. I remember some discussion about that.
I guess what we're doing is we're creating the measurements now. This is going before that. Like, what are the actual measurements?
But if they were so worried about it like being exact, like wouldn't it be better just
This is how we're making it exact. This is the making of it. Right? Okay, Yom Mar. Reb Shimon Aimer. We learned before. Reb Shimon says, "Lo yesham hin." What they didn't use a hin in the base of Mikdash. Shaper kam le Reb Shimon Rabbanan. The Gemara says Reb Shimon's right. What are the Chacham going to say to that? The Rabbanan respond, have a hin the Avid Moshe l'Shemen HaMishcha. There was that original hin that Moshe used when he made the Shemen HaMishcha, the anointing oil, the Ksiv Shemen Zayis hin. It says it was a hin. Mar Savar Kivon the Ders Levet Tzarech if he showed Avdei Ignes and Idach Kivon the Have. One says that since we didn't need it anymore, you put it away. And that was the end of it. The other one says, no, we have it. It's like our Pesach stuff that we haven't used in years, but you keep putting it away year after year, even though you take it out and put it back. You know that it's like one bowl. That's what is by us? It's the salad dryer. You know the thing you spin to turn this down. Yeah, we take it out every year. We put it back. We never use it. But I have it just to make sure I don't buy it again. That's like you have some of these things you have to save to make sure you don't buy.
10-gallon pot.
10-gallon pot. You use that once for kashering.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah,
You probably used it once for kashering.
Yeah,
most probably is the
Sit on the
cost.
stove.
All metal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cost.
You used it for kashering. Yeah,
I
it's
still,
15 years ago.
I still have on the hanger the big rock.
Did
We did that.
I have something even better. I have my grandmother's iron.
Oh,
With
just solid metal.
non-electric iron.
Yeah, solid metal.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I put it on the stove. I pour the hot water on the counters. I just move this thing and it lasts the whole counter. You know, like it doesn't cool down. This thing is like I use a hanger.
Iron, your white junta shirt.
And it
you
comes
burned
black.
it.
Oh, that's it. It used to burn.
It used to burn the.
Okay. So Amar Mar Resmi Avi Tachtav. We said that for Reb Shimon, if he's not going to have a hin, so what are you going to put in place? It says Laisagidim Ma'ayil. So okay, you don't have. You only have 6. Big deal. It says Kedam Ravina Gemira Shtei Smiches Betzibar. We know that there's 2 smicha that you have to lean on a carbon by a carbon tzibur, and Hachanami Gemiri the Sheva Midas Shalachei Mikdash. That was just an example of sometimes we have these measurements. What were the 2 smichas? One was the par of Avodah Zarah, and the other one was the sur of Azazel. The sur of Azazel, the Kohen Gadol did smicha. So we know that there's 2. There has to be 2. We know that there's 7. There has to be 7. Over here, 7 measurements.
Right,
So it's a
the Kohen Gadol did.
Yeah.
The other guy just.
So it's just an example.
The cliff.
It's an example, right? Hakanam Gemir, the Sheva Midas Shalach Mikdash. So he knows that there's 7. We have to fill it in. Rabbi Lazar Bar Tzadok Kaimer Shnasis Sayibehin. V'leslei Sheva Midas. if he says that there are measuring lines on the cup, then he doesn't have the Sheva Midas. So the Gemara answers, you're right. Leslie, Taka doesn't have it. Iba Yisema, my Sheva Midas, Sheva Medidas. There's 7 measuring, 7 markings on it. Okay, let's leave it over here. We're up to Peches, the Mishnah.
The fourth mission. Thank you, Rabbi.
Wait.
Okay, hello, I'm going to turn this up.